Good morning, esteemed colleagues. We are starting our working day from the briefing of the Speaker of the ATO headquarters, Leonid Matyukhin. And now I would like to invite Vladyslav Seleznyov, the acting Speaker of the headquarters of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome you here today in Kiev. The first Deputy Minister of Ukraine, Ivan Rusnak, will have the meeting with the Director of Regional Programs of the Agency on International Cooperation of the Ministry of Defense of USA, Mr. McCartney. At the same time, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Stepan Poltorak, will participate in the ceremony of receiving the assistance for the Armed Forces of Ukraine from the Government of Canada. He will be heading the delegation of our Defense Ministry. The head of the staff, the Chief of the Staff, Viktor Muzhenko, will participate in the expanded meeting of Ukrainian-American Coordination Committee on Military Cooperation and Defense Reforms. Also, this week, the leaders of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine will have the meeting with the Ambassador of Canada to Ukraine, Roman Vasyuk, the head of the international mission on investigating the catastrophe of Boeing 777 MH17 of Malaysian Airlines, Peter Yap Albersberg, and also will participate in the ceremony of transferring the certificate of humanitarian assistance from Slovak Republic. The total value of the assistance from Slovak Republic is approximately $550,000. In Vilnius, the representatives of Armed Forces of Ukraine will participate in the launching conference on planning multinational training, Maple Arch 2015. The new and modernized equipment and military equipment from state departments is coming to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The Ukrainian military units which are involved into ATO anti-terrorist operations received 3 new armored personnel carriers BTR-4E and also 130 metal detectors. So starting from the last year, the Armed Forces of Ukraine received 179 of new and modernized samples of ammunition and military equipment, and also 1,969 other types of armaments. And besides, during the last week, the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the zone of it, ATO received 272 units of the restored military equipment and armament. The repair teams of the Armed Forces of Ukraine restored 268 units of equipment, including 6 tanks, T-64, 3 howitzers, 2 C-1 Gvozdika, 2 warfare infantry vehicles, BTR-7, BMP-1, and 24 BMP-2, 4 armored personnel carriers, 5 scouting reconnaissance vehicles, BRDM-2, and 1 scouting reconnaissance vehicle, BRM-1K. Besides, 218 units of automobile vehicles are now operating, including 57 Urals, 56 Zils, 26 Gaz trucks, 14 Kraz, 16 Kamaz trucks, 10 Maz trucks, and 6 light armored trucks, MTL BAT. This way, starting from the beginning of anti-terrorist operation, the Armed Forces of Ukraine received, restored, and repaired 19,656 units of equipment and armament, including 641 units of missile armament, 4,080 of armored units, more than 13,000 units of automobile vehicles, and 1,500 units of equipment for different types of military units. Out of them, most of them were restored by the special brigades of the military units. Last week, the Armed Forces of Ukraine sent to the state companies for restoration 27 warfare infantry vehicles. In the training centers of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the work on receiving the military, newly enrolled military continues. And the cycle of receiving the mobilized citizens starts from registration of the documents in the special departments for distribution. The data from personal cases are verified. After that, the citizens are equipped with all the necessary uniform and equipment, and they are instructed. The special housing accommodations are prepared for accommodating the newly mobilized citizens. There's everything needed for living, for taking meals and laundry. Besides, the newly enrolled military immediately received the special salary cards from the Ukrainian banks. Now, the training material basis of the training centers of armed forces of Ukraine is absolutely ready to start trainings with the newly enrolled. These courses for 26 days. 80% of the time is for practical training with personal weapons, equipment, communication means, and means of collective firing. The training groups are composed separately for officers of reserve and for the privates and sergeants. All the trainers and teachers are not just the officers who participated in anti-terrorist operation, but they are the researchers and methodists which were very carefully examining all the aspects of military actions in the conditions of so-called hybrid war. Also, there's always in the training centers there are professional military psychologists. The officers of reserve, besides restoring individual combating skills, will be practicing in commanding the personnel. The officers of reserves who have no experience or work with the personnel after finishing the courses will be appointed to primary officer ranks of the level platoon company. Answering your question about the events that took place yesterday in the south of Ukraine, I would like to inform you about the following. In Kherson region, in the region where the military of armed forces of Ukraine were executing their task, the emergency situation happened on the 1st of February at night. Near Chervony Cheban Kherson region, there was a fire of the field camp of the military unit, in the result of which 6 military were killed and died, and 11 got wounded. The wounded servicemen were delivered by the ambulances to the Chaplinsky Regional Hospital, where they are given the first medical aid as of 7 a.m. on the 1st of February. The fire was localized. And the reasons of this fire will be identified by the law enforcement service of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Now the floor is given to Leonid Matyukhin. So what was happening last night in the zone of ATO? The servicemen of the Forces of Anti-Terrorist Operation are holding the positions only according to the preliminary data. On the 1st of February, the enemy lost 180 militants who were killed and 248 were wounded. Besides, 4 cannons were eliminated. The night was not quiet. The militants were shelling at Debaltsevo, Nikishina, Chernukhina, and 3 times at Zolote from 9 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. near Yuzhno Komunarivska. The sniper of the military of the enemy was working near Leninsk. The terrorists were trying to assault the positions of ATO in the Donetsk direction from the artillery. The enemy was firing 3 times at the settlement Vodiane, twice at the at the settlement Tanensk, and also opened the Verkhnetarets and Novomikhailivka. In Lugansk direction, from Grad systems, the combatants 4 times were shelling at Shastya, Vilhave, and from other types of military armaments at Stanitsa Luganska, Staraya Darsa, Kilniki, and 3 times at Tryukhizbenka. Near Mariupol yesterday after 4:30 p.m. it was relatively quiet. The terrorists were violating the silence only from 3 till 4 o'clock at night. They were shelling at Chermalik. Talking about the events in the zone of anti-terrorist operation, during the week there were 104 shellings of the positions of Ukrainian military and also settlements. There were 35 settlements shelled. In the result of the shellings, in the result of the military actions, Ukraine lost 5 military, 29 were wounded. The military are sent to medical hospitals now. As of now, in the hospitals and medical institutions, we have 465 servicemen, including 15 who are seriously wounded. This is all the information as of now. Thank you. Your questions, please. Leonid, do you have any updated information on Debaltseva? What's happening there now? And the information that we have given is the information as of 7 o'clock. I can get some update, but I need to leave the Skype. Okay, let us try to contact you in 10 more minutes. Please find out what's happening there.